This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
It's probably a question that many of you have pondered to yourselves. Is this AI thing overhyped, or is it maybe underhyped? And we might not know the answer to that question for many years, but it doesn't change the harsh reality right now. Regardless of what your views on generative AI are, everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's in this mad dash to cash in on AI. So I'm excited for today's conversation as we tackle this with a guest that's been there, right? One who's actually written the book on this very topic. So I'm excited for today's conversation, and I hope you are too. So what's going on, y'all? My name is Jordan Wilson. I'm the host of Everyday AI. This is your daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter, helping us all not just learn what's happening in AI, but how we can actually leverage it to grow our companies and our careers. So it starts here with the podcast live stream. That's where you learn, but you leverage everything that we learn by going to our website at youreverydayai.com. So there on the website, you can sign up for our free daily newsletter. We're going to be pulling out the best insights from today's conversation and breaking it all down for you there, as well as keeping you up to date with everything else that you need to know in the world of AI to be the smartest person in AI at your company. Also on the website, you can go listen to more than 500 episodes with some of the brightest minds in AI. All right, I'm excited for today's conversation on this mad dash to cash in on AI and talking about if it's overhyped or underhyped. But before we do, let's start off as we do on most days by going over the AI news. A lot actually going on today. So first, Adobe announced that it is adding image generation AI models from OpenAI and Google into its Firefly app, broadening the range of AI tools available to users and making the app accessible also on mobile devices. So Firefly users will be able to create images using OpenAI's GPT image gen. A lot of news on that one today, as well as Google's Imagen 3, Google's VO2 video generator, Flux 1.1 Pro, and more. And they will be adding models soon from Luma and Runway. So Adobe is aiming to serve different user needs by allowing customers to choose between its proprietary Firefly models for production level work and also third-party models, whether it's for ideation, experimentation, or whatever else. So pretty big news there from Adobe. All right, next, but pretty big as well. Geez, a lot of, for a random Thursday here in the middle of end of April, a lot of AI news. So Microsoft has officially unveiled its Copilot Wave 2 spring release for 2025 with some new updates and just some old ones as well, putting it under the spring Wave 2 wrap. So a couple new things. The chat interface has been redesigned to make it easier for users to find and use tools, access previously created content, revisit past conversations, and engage with favored AI agents directly from the chat. Previously, Microsoft has also rolled out AI agents called Researcher and Analyst, powered by OpenAI's latest reasoning models, which will soon be accessible through their Frontier program. Also, a new agent store will allow users to browse, select, and pin preferred AI agents for quick access. And then probably the biggest one out of this is, well, they're going to be rolling out ChatGPT's new GPT-4o image generator, and also integrating that as well throughout their Copilot platform. The Copilot Notebook feature will soon transform notes and data into actionable insights, including dynamic charts and those ever popular audio summaries narrated by two hosts. So yeah, a lot going on there on the Copilot side. And last but not least, related actually to those last two stories, is OpenAI has officially unleashed their image gen model to the API. All right, so you might be wondering, what does that mean? Well, all those viral images that are being created in OpenAI's GPT-4o image generator, well, they've all been inside of ChatGPT, but now OpenAI is opening that up to developers everywhere. So what that means is you're probably going to be seeing a lot higher quality of AI generated images where, previously, especially for these companies that maybe still use OpenAI's DALL-E technology, the images weren't that great. But now we are going to see a much broader rollout across the board to probably hundreds. And major companies already, such as Canva, GoDaddy, and Airtable, are already exploring or even already have implemented the new model, which on the API side is called GPT Image 1. Terrible name. But this is going to definitely streamline creative workflows and offer image generation capabilities directly in so many more enterprise tools. All right. For more on those stories, make sure to go to youreverydayai.com. All right. Let's get into the heart of today's conversation. This is one I'm stoked for. Bringing in a Chicago writer and reporter, right, who used to be in the Chicago scene. So for our live stream audience, please help me welcome to the show Gary Rivlin, the author of AI Valley. Gary, thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI Show.
Great to be here. Thanks, Jordan.
All right. I'm excited for this one. Live stream audience, thanks for tuning in. Kyle and Gene and we got a couple dozen already in the house. So if you do have any questions on today's topic, make sure to get them in. Might have time for them at the end, but let's start at the top, Gary. Give us a little bit about your background in Silicon Valley specifically and how you've been kind of reporting and following AI since the early days.
Right. So I had been a political reporter at the start of my career, but it was the mid-1990s. I was in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And, I'd actually gone to school as an engineering major. I had programmed, but just got interested in politics. But suddenly the dotcom internet was rising. And so I kind of changed topics in the mid-1990s and wrote about the rise of the internet, the dotcom boom and bust. And all. And, kind of since, and then kind of went on to, I was working for Wired. I went on to cover Silicon Valley for the New York Times through the mid 2000s, kind of the Google going public, kind of the revival of Silicon Valley after kind of the 2000.com fall. And, I'd kind of moved on, but then I just got this random email at the end of 2022 from Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, investor in Facebook, Airbnb, kind of just a central figure in Silicon Valley. I had gotten to know him in the early 2000s, right after LinkedIn went launched. I wrote a feature for Wired. So I've known him since the early 2000s, and I was on his media. He's like a dear friend. I'm like one of 2,500 friends. And, at a different day, I might have hit delete, but I read this thing and he's like, hey, I'm having I've co-founded my first startup since LinkedIn, and it's around AI. And he had this one line, just reminded me of me being a frustrated programmer earlier in my life. Like, instead of us learning the machine's language, the machine is going to speak our language. And the light bulb, wow. And I realized I had great time. It was right before the world kind of went crazy with ChatGPT. Again, the end of 2022. It's maybe I should move back to Silicon Valley. Move back to Silicon Valley as a topic. And so since the start of 2023, I've been following, Reid Hoffman's company and other founders, other investors, looking into Google, Microsoft. How are they planning on cashing in, taking advantage of this moment?
So I love that story, right? Like getting an email from Reid Hoffman and being like, like really thinking about it and first being like, is this real? And then figuring out, oh yes, it's definitely real, right? So, walk us through, how did that initial email from Reid eventually, right, down the line, turn into the book AI Valley?
Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on Gen AI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front-end AI strategy, you can partner with us too, just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
Right. So, I mean, just because one person's telling you like, hey, this moment is here, you don't necessarily get on an airplane and, start reporting. So I just, made calls and like, just figuring out that generative AI really, this was a breakthrough moment. Again, it helped that my timing happened to coincide with ChatGPT. So the wider world was waking up to the potential of generative AI, but, just kind of recontacting sources of mine from over the years and understanding like, wow, all this has happened, like the Transformer model out of Google, GPTs 1, 2, 3, 3.5, before this, that you're like, wait a second, there have been these key moments and this is the inflection point. So, early on, I just realized like, wait a second, this is one of those before and after moments, like before ChatGPT, a small group of people were involved in AI, but after ChatGPT, this is generative AI. This isn't a product like Google Translate behind the glass. This isn't a recommendation engine. This is something you can talk with, you can interact with. And so, I just kind of instinctually understood that this is an inflection point and I should jump on this moment.
Mm. And we'll make sure to leave the link to the book in the newsletter today, because I think it's definitely on my list of books that I need to read very soon. But, walk us through maybe what are some of your main findings, right, from being able to talk with some of the leaders that are building all of the AI systems that we're using now, as well as just, being privy to everything, right? As a former Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, privy to probably things that we didn't get to see on the surface. But walk us through maybe some of your main findings of the book in AI Valley.
Well, I mean, one of the first things is, how did we get here? And, looking into the history was fascinating to me. I tell it through a couple of characters, but, since the 1950s, there was this over-optimism that AI is just around the next corner. So for like decades, since the 50s, it's been just around the next corner. There was this massive wrong turn that, kind of rules-based, this idea that you have to like teach a program line by line by line to how to react. That was the main approach. People ridiculing neural networks. Neural networks date back to the 1950s, but people didn't see any promise in that. And in fairness to those folks, there really wasn't much promise because computers weren't powerful enough until that point. We didn't have the digital data for training. That wouldn't really happen until the second half of the 90s and the rise of the internet. So that was one thing, like, just kind of how did we get here, and sort of, just sort of to understand this moment, it helps understand what had happened before it. And, I also started realizing like, I'm in deja vu. This is the mid 1990s all over again. We could talk about a couple of differences. The change is moving faster than it did in the 1990s. But with that said, there's this idea. I learned this early on. My second interview ever in Silicon Valley, this really smart guy, Paul Sappho, a forecaster, kind of helping us understand the future, said, we tend to overestimate the short-term impact of a technology, but underestimate the long-term impact. And that's the internet. You've asked me about the internet in 1997. Like, I understood, lots of reporters understood, like, yeah, startups, you're not really going to get, this isn't going to happen fast enough for you to get, fabulously wealthy overnight. And, most dotcoms did in fact go out of business with no return. But I also didn't quite understand in the mid 1990s how pervasive this would be. In fact, I remember talking to a venture capitalist back then, John Doerr, a very well-known venture capitalist, and he had just invested in this company called Amazon.com. And he says to me like, oh, they're going to do more than books. And so to my little mind, it was like, oh, they're going to do CDs too. They're going to, it just, they're going to do. And so, I don't think we understood it was going to be the everything store, and so much of the world, business, education, and your personal life would be transformed by the internet. And I think the same, 2 years on the front lines of AI, I think the same thing. I use models, I use large language models every day, all day. They're a really useful tool. I could tell you, we could talk about, the strengths and the limits, but, it's a powerful, powerful tool. However, its limits, like people talk about 2025 is the year of the personal agent. Like, yeah, but it doesn't really have much of a memory. And so the whole advantage of a personal agent is they know, like, Jordan likes aisle seats and Gary likes window seats. It gets to know you over time. They really are having a hard time remembering you from session to session. But imagine 10 or 15 years from now, and I think we'll say the same thing about AI that we've said about the internet. It's changed everything. It's turned upside down organizations, education, personalized businesses across the board.
So, I'm curious, and that was some great background there in drawing these parallels to the, the dot-com, boom or bust era of the late 90s and ultimately what that led to. But, I'm wondering, what other insights did you glean? And, like that comparison specifically, right? I'm always thinking about it because I think, companies specifically, they had, 3, 5, sometimes 10 years to, figure out their kind of internet strategy, right? But on the AI side, I tend to think it's not really the same. Yet I think people are really drawing that comparison, in my opinion, maybe too tightly, right? With everything on AI and kind of the dot-com era, and they're like, we've been here before. So I'm curious from your findings, your reportings, are you seeing that as well? Companies trying to follow kind of their dot-com business plan a little too tightly?
Yeah, are you talking about kind of potential customers? You're talking about the creators of these.
Maybe
models?
even both. Yeah, that's interesting to tackle it from both.
Yeah, I mean, for the creators, let's understand that when an open AI or an Anthropic takes billions, tens of billions of dollars in venture dollars, they really need to satisfy their investors, and so I really do think they're following that dot-com playbook of overpromising, and I think that's really going to hurt them. I mean, I wouldn't bet against OpenAI, but just sort of there's an issue that the accelerationists, the Zoomers, those who say like full speed ahead, let's put no guidelines on AI. The majority of general public is fearful of AI. Less than 1/3 of folks in polling are excited about AI. And so I do worry that a hype is going to cause a similar fall. I don't think we're going to have a dot-com like bust with AI. We're not seeing all these AI startups go public. It'll be different, but I really do worry about kind of a boomerang. So if I was talking to a business audience, I would say, yes, you should be experimenting with this. But again, understand it's this idea of like autonomous AI, this idea that, oh, we'll just have AI employees, digital employees, and they'll do the work. And it's like, I think in the short and medium term, that's the wrong construct. To me, in fact, I love Microsoft's name for its chatbot, Copilot. That's perfect. It's like, it's going to help you. We were talking before the show, like you can't type into a prompt, make me a Martin Scorsese movie, enter. Like that's not the way it works. You are the creative. It's human-centered, right now. It's a fabulously powerful tool. It's a limited tool. It makes mistakes. It's not quite where it's going to be in 5 or 10 years, but it's a really powerful tool that can help you do whatever you want to do. For the book, you'll laugh at this. Like the first thing I did when I thought of that, should I write a book about AI? I went to ChatGPT, like, write me a 5,000 word proposal that would win me a contract on a book on AI. And, I got 2 things from that experience. One, it is far better read than I am and has a far superior memory than me. But on the other hand, the second thing is like, it's very mediocre writing. It's very flat. And so like, however, when I say, hey, here's a paragraph. I'm not loving it. I like the ideas and it helped me improve it. That's when it's really strong. Get it. I'm the creative. I'm giving the ideas. I'm giving it the approach, and it could help me see that through. It could help me with the execution. And so like, I really think that's important for businesses to understand that this is an autonomous AI. We're not getting rid of the human, at least not quite yet. I can't predict 10, 50 years from now, but I want everyone, students in school to business leaders and everyone in between, like use this, understand what it's good at and what it's not good at.
So, Gary, you brought up an interesting fact as part of a study, saying that less than 1/3 of people are excited about AI, yet the 6 largest companies in the US by market cap are sticking every dollar they can into investing in these systems. Technically, hundreds of billions of dollars in CapEx and in AI spending, right? So how can you kind of like explain that dichotomy, right? Because people aren't necessarily thrilled about AI, yet the biggest companies in the world are sticking hundreds of billions of dollars and kind of saying like, hey, it's coming no matter what. So, I'm curious, how can we make sense of that kind of dichotomy?
I think it's very rational for a Microsoft or Meta to be putting in these tens of billions of dollars, will probably be soon each company hundreds of billions of dollars, because if they miss this, it's going to be a multi-trillion-dollar miss. Mm-hmm. And so, you can almost see it as a hedge against the future, but I don't think it's a hedge against the future. I come back to, we tend to overestimate in the short run and underestimate the long run. Like these companies, Microsoft's sitting on $100 billion. They can afford to do this kind of investment because they see, and I think they see correctly, that 5, 10, 15 years from now, they're going to get a nice return on this investment. Like, right now we're, capacity on these data centers, they're predicting that, by 2030, we'll have a doubling of data centers. So I don't see that diminishing anytime soon. I just, there's an expression among the venture capitalists, like, go to where the puck is going, not where it is right now. And I think that's what these companies are doing. Mm-hmm. They see like, we're making an investment, not for the next quarter, but for a 5 or 10 year time horizon.
Mm. And that seems very difficult, right? To even like my, because I think about the, skate to where the puck is going, which makes sense and has historically made sense for, at least dealing with tech innovations over the past couple of decades. But at least for me, when I look at everything as someone that covers AI every single day, it's almost like, we're in a new game, right? Like there's no longer a puck, right? And there's no longer skating because, all these, machines are starting to do these things for us, right? So, not asking you to be a business consultant here, but how can the majority, of Americans and our listeners kind of, take on that mantra of skating where the puck is going when AI development is so freaking fast?
Right. So I was talking about kind of the venture capitalists, the founders, the tech leaders, skating where the puck is going. I think for people right now, again, start using it. I'll use that. I wrote a feature article about this incredible company, Runway. They do text to image to video. And, they're one of the leaders in, video generation. I mean, they're up against OpenAI, Google, et cetera. So who knows who's going to win this? It's 3 artists in New York City, taking on, deep learning PhDs. And so far, if they're not ahead, they're right there in the competition. And so in doing that article, I said, like, it's really important that who's actually using your product. Hollywood is using their product. They like, instead of having they want to do a 60-second scene that is on a mountainside with 1,000 soldiers in the in the Middle Ages. That's prohibitively expensive. It would be $10 million more, and they probably wouldn't do it. But now with AI, they can do it. And so, what are the practical things? I talked to a global production company that uses a Runway all the time, and how is this helping? They said, in the past, they'd have 50 or 60 people for a film shoot, kind of people organizing the talent, the production people, the post-production people, all of that. Now, 50, 60 people, now using Runway, they have 15 to 20 people. the timeline, instead of being, typically 16 weeks from thinking of an idea to, launching to releasing it, it's now 6 weeks. So 16 weeks to 6 weeks. And they say like the average project, we're saving 50 to 80%. See, that's a very concrete way. They have figured out like, okay, we're still figuring this out, as you correctly say, like, who knows in 5 years what a video model, what will a cutting edge video model, look like? But they're figuring out how to use this thing that exists now that's a limited but powerful tool, or a tool that's very powerful in certain ways and not quite what it's going to be. And so they're figured out like how to save 50 to 80%. That's a big savings. And so, across the board, you've got your marketing team, and it's a marketing team of 10, like, I think using AI, you can have a marketing team of 5 that's, using the AI to iterate and, kind of, oh, here's my idea, do a quick illustration. Oh, no, change it. You'll still have an illustrator or two. You'll still have creatives, but I don't think you'll need as many. I think right now, AI is a great cost savings tool rather than like, oh, we will replace our marketing team, with digital labor.
Yeah, I think the runway example is great. And yeah, obviously, Gen 4, extremely impressive. And it is cool to hear kind of the story, right? It's artists and not, people with, 20 years of deep learning experience. And, yeah, they did their partnership with Lionsgate, right? Like a huge studio there. So extremely impressive. So I'm wondering, Gary, kind of like going back to this concept of, AI maybe being overhyped in the short run and maybe underhyped in the long run. Even for you as someone that was covering this, from the front lines, so to speak, and being able to talk, personally with some of the leaders in the AI industry, what were maybe some things that even took you back and you're like, oh, wait, wow, right? Like I have those moments all the time, but I'm very much on the outside looking in. So from an insider's point of view, what over the past, year or two or a couple of months or a couple of weeks, right, is really even shocking you?
Well, this idea, and this definitely, conjured up memories from the dotcom years, this idea that venture capitalists are so scared of missing out on the moment, the FOMO, like we could have gotten early into X, but we missed this, multi-billion-dollar opportunity. So they're throwing money at these half-baked ideas. I mean, Ilya Sutskever, the co-founder of OpenAI, who famously initiated the coup back in 2023, he left OpenAI for obvious reasons. So he's founded Safe Superintelligence, I think it's called.
Yep, that's
that they don't have a product yet, but they've raised billions in venture capital and they have a paper worth of, I think, $32 billion. And so I kept on seeing this happen over and over again. There's, a promising team, like, 2 top Google machine learning specialists teaming up with someone at, Meta who left, another machine learner. And they create a company, they write a memo, and they raise, $10 million on a $100 million, valuation. Like, I think 2 things, like, that's insane. And the other thing is, like, I sort of get it. These are really promising people. We have no idea. We want to get in on the hot deal. We might lose our $3 million we put in towards the 10 million. But if we don't, if it pays off, that 3 million, could be, billions. So I was covering Silicon Valley for the New York Times in the mid 2000s. And there's this new company, thefacebook.com. And Excel, Jim Breyer, famous venture capitalist, put in, I think he put in $12 million at $100 million valuation, up and down Sand Hill Road, all through Silicon Valley. They're all mocking, Breyer, what a fool, for this college-only app. He's putting in all this money, $100 million. Like, that 12 million became like, if you had kept it through going public, it was like 4 billion, something like that. And if he held it, it'd be worth, tens and tens of billions of dollars. And, that's the venture capital game. Most bets are wrong. I mean, they either, show nothing or they show barely any return. But, it's a game where that one big hit can make up for everything. So, and that's venture capital in Silicon Valley. We're just going to slap down bets and just hope that 1 or 2 of them are huge. So you asked me what it conjured up, this kind of this insanity that's understandable.
So, One thing that you mentioned earlier, right, when we were talking about, less than a third of people, being excited about AI, yet all the big companies are, investing in it. You kind of talked about this boomerang effect. Could you talk a little bit more about what that means?
Well, so there's business and there's the personal side. Business I put in a different category. Like, okay, if your work is saying, like the Shopify CEO, I want every employee to be using it, you're going to be using it. But, kind of this whole idea of personal agents, this idea that the public's going to be the consumer, the general consumer audience is going to be using these things. Like, we're asking, these personal agents are going to have all this power. They're going to have access to your private information. And, kind of in an existential sense, like humans are soon not going to be the smartest entity on the planet. It's kind of frightening for people. I mean, I blame the media some for that. I blame Hollywood, for, the Terminator-like movies like, oh, the robots are going to take over. That's not my concern. But, so I feel like they're going to get ahead of this. And I think it's inevitable that something bad's going to happen because of AI. Like, just to make one up, like $1 trillion is siphoned off from the global economics system before a human even understands what's happening. A deadly pathogen, an AI for good, it could create, vaccines and cures. There's also one that could create a deadly pathogen. So I think it's inevitable that something bad's going to happen. And I really fear that's going to turn the general public off to AI. So I wish those working on frontier models would be a little bit more aware of where the public is, assure them that trust and safety is essential. As I'm sure your listeners know, trust and safety used to be a major concern of all these companies. But once the starter's pistol went off, once ChatGPT went out there, the competition cashing in became the priority and trust and safety became a secondary concern. I think that's a mistake.
That is fascinating, right? And even these, frontier AI labs, their safety teams have, kind of shrunken over the years, or maybe, it was front and center previously, and now, it's kind of an afterthought, right? Like the safety of models, right? Like, what are you seeing? What are you maybe seeing as similar trends, right? So that's one. Hey, safety. It used to be all about safety. Now the starter pistol went off. It doesn't really matter, right? What are some other trends that you've picked up through this experience of reporting, in Silicon Valley that maybe the rest of us haven't picked up on yet?
So what really scares me, so I approached this book looking at startups. I thought, like, I want to find who's going to be the next Google, who's going to be the next Facebook, Meta. And what I discovered after like all my reporting is like, the next Google is likely going to be Google, and the next Meta is going to be Meta. These things are so expensive. When I started, it was like they were talking about you started 2023, tens of millions of dollars to train, fine tune, and operate these large language models. By the time I was done reporting, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. Now it's billions, if not tens of billions of dollars. And like a large venture capital outfit in Silicon Valley raises $1 billion. But if Anthropic, as Dario Amodei, said, they're going to need, he figures $100 billion, for their next iteration, their 2027 iteration. How are they going to raise that money? So I'm scared it's going to get it's so expensive that either they're going to have to sell so much of their company, they don't really own the company. Anthropic, to use that example, Google's put in billions of dollars, Amazon's put in billions of dollars, or probably more likely, they'll end up getting bought by a Google or an Amazon. So, my big fear is that big tech, which created a big mess with technology in the 2010s, that they're going to be in charge of AI. There's the trust issue. AI had really bad timing, right? It came out, AI has been around for decades, but, generative AI coming out at the end of 2022, trust in big tech was at pretty much an all-time low. Facebook, Amazon, Google, people really aren't trusting those companies. And yet I do think AI is going to be in the hands of Google, Microsoft, maybe an OpenAI. And, I'll point out, by the way, OpenAI, founded in 2015, was a counter to Google. Rather than, start as a nonprofit. Famously, they're trying to rid themselves of their nonprofit parent, but it started as kind of this idealistic thing rather than profit-driving AI. This is too essential. This is too powerful. We want it in the hands of an entity that isn't profit-driven, but OpenAI is as profit-driven as Google or any other company out there. So even if an OpenAI breaks into that Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, category of trillion-dollar giants, I think they're the same as those companies. I mean, Sam Altman, it's amazing what he pulled off. He's an amazing CEO, but we've seen all the folks who have left OpenAI. I mean, the Anthropic team before ChatGPT came out, but many people since then, keep on saying the same message, that safety is taking a back seat to shiny toys. Again, I get it. Like, let's. These are great tools. They could do amazing things for medicine, for science, for education. I see fabulous upsides into these things. But there's also, like any technology, there's goods and there's bads. And I really wish we'd be more deliberate of ensuring that AI is a net positive and not a net negative.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing ultimately on everyone's mind. So, Gary, we've covered a lot in today's conversation, but I'm sure something that remains on people's mind is, okay, is AI overhyped or is it underhyped? So maybe for those business leaders, they've been using generative AI, they're implementing it in their company, but they're still wondering that. Is it overhyped? Is it underhyped? What's your quick takeaway on that as we wrap up today's show?
I would say individual companies are overhyping their specific products and what they're able to do, but I think AI is underhyped. I really think AI is going to transform this world. Amazing things are going to happen because of AI. Yeah, I'm going to say underhyped.
Great question. Great answer there, and a great way to wrap up today's show. So, Gary, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on the Everyday AI Show. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. This was great. Thanks.
All right. There's a lot there, y'all, and there's going to be a lot more. If you missed something that Gary talked about, or if you want to dig in more, that's where it's going to happen in our newsletter. So if you haven't already, please go to youreverydayai.com. Sign up for the free daily newsletter. If this was helpful, tell someone about it. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you. Make sure to subscribe. Leave us a rating if you could. Thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you back tomorrow and every day for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.